who do you think is the best candidate right now? And Luca de la Torre probably on that injury list, so he's not a candidate to replace McKennie if indeed the U.S. doesn't have him for that opener against Wales.
Let me just say right after that, you don't replace Weston McKennie for many different aspects. There's no like for like with Weston McKennie. His contagious play, box-to-box, offense, defense, what he can give you in that final third, getting on the end of things because he happens to be a goal scorer. He scores his fair amount of goals. There's nobody you can duplicate that action with. And I also don't think he's going to miss that because everything I've seen of Weston McKennie is a physical freak of nature. He comes back way before all these timelines are ever met. So that said, the only person I can think of would be a Brenden Aaronson. Giovanni Reyna crossed my mind, but you don't want to risk Giovanni Reyna right now with his health in a position that's so demanding, and he may not be a starter for you. So you go with Brenden Aaronson with that work rate. A Brenden Aaronson who has the box-to-box mentality, will give you an honest shift, but he is so creative. He has that technical ability in the final third. He can create for you. He can also produce for you, whether it's goals or assists. He seems to be a player that's played there before that I feel comfortable with in that 8th position that can give you Weston McKennie-like sequences or in productivity, but also that defensive discipline where you're not losing too much. Because if not, you're talking about a Kellen Acosta and you're going double pivot, and I think that changes the posture of this team a little bit too much to more of a defensive posture. So I would go with Brenden Aaronson.
I like the Brenden Aaronson shout. I like the idea of moving an attacking player inside, you know, maybe one of those wingers into an 8. I think this is why, Herc, a guy like Tim Weah is so important, that he gets back to health and back to form for the U.S. men's national team, because he is a difference maker out wide. And if you have a Tim Weah, then it allows you to, whether it's a Brenden Aaronson or a Gio Reyna, or I don't know, would you even maybe put Christian Pulisic into that conversation? You've got guys out wide who you can move centrally if indeed you don't have a Weston McKennie. I will pull back the curtain here because I want people to know that your first choice was actually Kellen Acosta, right? Before you changed to Brenden Aaronson. You've obviously pointed out
speaking out loud choice.
Right. Yes. You've obviously pointed out why you would go with Aaronson over Acosta. What was it about Acosta's game that made you pick him first? Because he was actually the first person that I thought of as the closest thing to a like-for-like.
Because I went closest thing to a like-for-like, but then I realized there is no like-for-like for Weston McKennie, everything that he could provide for you. And Kellen Acosta's a very good insurance policy. He is. And he's a very good player to plug in there if you need to close out a game or if you want to have more of a defensive posture. And there is no better player at Brown and Mosiery, Housery, and all of CONCACAF than Kellen Acosta. So I am there for these games that he does or deploys. But you need something else at the World Cup level. You can't just be all defend and absorb. You need to have a player with creativity. You need to have a player that has a good work rate. You need to have somebody that can produce something sometimes out of nothing, because that will be the difference in these games when it's so tightly contested. That's a Brenden Aaronson for me. He just seems to be one of those guys that the U.S. jersey comes on and there seems to be a little cape flowing behind him. He comes up for these big moments.
All right, David Harris in the YouTube chat says, at this rate, Herc might get the call up to go to Qatar with all of the injuries. No doubt about that. The injuries certainly starting to pile up, or at least this weekend it really felt like they did for the U.S. men's national team.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.